Even a memory not mine can become my truth if it saves someone I love. That's not just a line from the story you're about to hear. It's a truth that lingers long after the final word. On Veil Marks, we don't just tell stories, we uncover the hidden corners of the heart. In this video, you'll witness a tale of sacrifice, memory, and the kind of loyalty that lives beyond words. Stay until the end, because the ending may just stay with you forever. And if it touches you, please leave a comment, subscribe, and help us reach 1,000 subscribers. That's the spark that helps us create more meaningful stories like this one. The late afternoon wind rolled off the Savannah harbor, carrying with it the sharp scent of salt and the whisper of something old and forgotten. Autumn had draped the town in a soft mist, blurring the edges of buildings and muting the sounds of the few cars that passed. The streets were nearly empty, just the way Leah Thompson liked them. 15 years old and already more comfortable with silence than conversation, Leah moved along the sidewalk with her backpack slung over one shoulder and a leather-bound notebook hugged tight to her chest. It was her father's old journal, now filled with her short stories, half-poems, and the dreams she couldn't say aloud. Her dad had been gone almost a decade, taken by a lab explosion no one ever fully explained. The military had offered words like accidental malfunction and classified project, but not much else. Her mother, Karen, had stopped asking questions long ago. Karen was a woman of few words, forged by a life of late nights at the shipyard and the weight of single motherhood. She fixed things, boats, engines, broken door hinges, but not feelings, not grief. Their conversations were mostly functional. What time dinner would be ready, whether Leah had finished her homework, if she needed a ride. There was love there, somewhere under the fatigue and calloused hands, but not the kind Leah could hold on to. So instead, Leah held on to stories. She had taken a longer route home that day, wandering along the edge of the old marina where the trawlers sat rusting and gulls cried overhead. It was a place that felt like time had forgotten it, just like her. She didn't plan on stopping at the animal rescue shelter, but when she saw the crooked sign swaying in the wind that read, "Seaside Rescue Last Week Open," something pulled at her. Inside, the air smelled faintly of bleach, wet fur, and something older, sadder, like abandonment. The lights buzzed overhead as Leah walked slowly between the kennels. Dogs barked, some wagged their tails, a few pressed their noses against the bars, eager for affection. But Leah didn't stop for any of them. It wasn't until she reached the back corner of the building that she froze. There, in a cage set slightly apart from the others, lay a large gray and white pit bull with a broad chest and muscles that still looked solid despite the neglect. His fur was coarse and uneven in places, his ears nicked from old wounds. But it wasn't his appearance that held her breath. It was his eyes. They didn't light up at her presence. He didn't bark or wag his tail. He didn't move at all. But his gaze locked onto hers with a strange, quiet force, like recognition passed between them. For a moment, the rest of the room faded. The barking, the buzzing lights, even the cold air pressing through the gaps in the old shelter walls. All Leah could see were those eyes, and the weight behind them. She stepped closer, ignoring the chill in her hands, and crouched down in front of the cage. The dog continued to stare, unblinking, as if waiting for her to say something. "I don't know you," she whispered, her voice nearly lost in the hum of the shelter's ventilation. "But you feel like someone I lost." The pit bull didn't react. No growl, no flinch. Just that same, deep, searching look. Footsteps approached behind her, the slow, tired shuffle of someone who had seen too many goodbyes. A woman in her 60s, wearing a faded green apron and worn-out sneakers, came to stand beside Leah. "That's Diesel," she said quietly. "Been here longer than any of the others. Doesn't take to people." Leah didn't turn around. "What happened to him?" The woman exhaled slowly, like the answer carried a weight too heavy for one breath. Came to us from some facility out west. Transferred here after they shut it down. No papers, no chip. Just a name on his collar and a mess of nightmares in his sleep. We tried to place him a few times, but... He's different. Her voice softened. There's something in him. Something watching. Thinking. Like he's been through more than most people I know. Leah slowly reached a hand out, hovering just beyond the bars. Did he ever hurt anyone? The woman shook her head. Number just doesn't connect. Won't play, won't eat if anyone's watching, won't sleep unless the lights are off and the room's silent. Leah glanced back at Diesel. Still unmoving, still watching. Why haven't you put him down? The woman looked down at her hands, calloused and knotted. Because some part of me thinks he's waiting. For something. For someone. That word echoed in Leah's chest. Someone. She didn't believe in fate, not really. But there was something about this place, this moment, this dog, that felt like it had been written before she ever arrived. Diesel finally blinked, just once, and Leah, despite all logic and reason, felt like something inside her clicked into place. She stood slowly. I want him. The woman turned sharply. Honey, he's not like the others. He's not a pet. I want him, Leah repeated, this time with a calm that surprised even herself. Please. The woman studied her for a long moment, eyes narrowing, searching Leah's face for signs of impulse. But what she saw instead was something rare, a quiet certainty. A girl who didn't want to fix him, but to understand him. I'll talk to your mama, the woman said. Can't promise she'll say yes. Leah nodded and looked one last time at Diesel, who had finally lifted his head from his paws. Their eyes met again, not as strangers this time, but as two souls quietly acknowledging each other's broken pieces. Outside, the wind picked up, and the sound of the ocean swept through the cracks in the shelter walls. Leah didn't shiver. For the first time in a long while, the cold didn't reach her bones. She had found something she hadn't even known she was searching for. Or maybe it had found her. The house was quiet that evening, quieter than usual. The kind of silence that made creaking floorboards sound louder and the ticking clock on the kitchen wall feel like a drumbeat. Karen had just finished her shift at the shipyard and sat at the kitchen table with a cup of black coffee in her hand, watching her daughter from across the room. Leah was kneeling next to the living room rug, unpacking the supplies the shelter had sent with Diesel, 2 bowls, a blanket, and a single worn-out rubber ball that had clearly never been used. Diesel lay a few feet away from her, perfectly still, his head resting on his paws, eyes half-lidded but not sleepy. Alert, quiet, watchful. Karen took another sip of coffee. You're really sure about this, huh? Leah nodded. He's not like other dogs. That's the part that worries me, her mother said gently, not judgmental, just tired. He's a Pitbull. That breed doesn't get a fair shake, and if something goes wrong... Nothing will go wrong, Leah said, too quickly. Then she softened. I don't know why, but I trust him. Karen didn't respond. She simply stared for a while longer, then stood and walked back into the laundry room without another word. For the next few days, Leah tried to adjust to life with Diesel. She gave him space, spoke to him softly, and left the back door open when the weather allowed. But Diesel didn't seem interested in the yard, or the toys, or the food when she was watching. He ate only when she wasn't looking, and he never touched the treats she left on the kitchen floor. He didn't bark, not once. He didn't chase birds in the backyard or wag his tail at passing neighbors like other dogs did. He didn't curl up on the couch or lay his head in her lap. Most of the time, Diesel would sit near the front window or, more often, in the garage. The garage had been her father's sanctuary, a place he had filled with strange equipment and half-built gadgets. Karen had never touched it after he disappeared. The dust had settled thickly on the workbenches, and old tools hung on hooks like forgotten memories. That's where Diesel went. And that's where Leah found him one night, sitting perfectly still in front of an old two-way radio unit mounted on the far wall. The thing hadn't worked in years, but when she walked in, Diesel's ears perked, and he growled low, not at her, but at the static sound crackling from the speaker. The radio shouldn't have been on. The power cord wasn't even plugged in. Leah reached for the switch anyway, but Diesel growled again, this time louder. She stepped back, uncertain. The growl faded, but Diesel's gaze never left the radio. His body was tense, rigid, like something inside him had been triggered. That night, Leah didn't sleep well. Her dreams were strange, vivid, almost real. In them, she wasn't herself, not exactly. She felt taller, older, like she was seeing through someone else's eyes. In one dream, she stood in a narrow hallway, lined with metal doors and warning signs. In another, she ran through a burning corridor, flames licking the walls as alarms screamed. She carried a child, cradled them, arms wrapped protectively around the tiny body, shielding them from falling debris. Then, she saw his face. A man, 30-something, blood trickling from his temple, eyes frantic. He shouted something, but it was drowned out by the explosion. Everything went white. She woke up gasping, heart pounding in her ears. Diesel sat by her bed, unmoving, staring at her. It was like he'd known. The dreams didn't stop after that. Every night, new fragments arrived, images, sounds, and names that made no sense. Leah wrote them down in her father's old notebook, trying to piece them together like a puzzle with no box cover. She recognized feelings in the dreams that didn't belong to her. Fear, rage, guilt, feelings she hadn't earned, memories she had no right to remember. It was unsettling at first. Then it became something more. One evening, while watching Diesel sit at the edge of the porch, staring out at the waves, Leah whispered, "Are these your memories?" Diesel didn't react. His eyes never left the horizon. But Leah felt something shift inside her, a quiet understanding that the memories weren't just dreams. They were leaking. From him, into her, or maybe from somewhere else entirely, into them both. She sat beside him, wrapping a blanket over her legs, the cold creeping into her skin. "You don't sleep. I get that now," she said softly. "Because you can't shut it off, can you? Whatever's in your head. It won't let you rest." Diesel blinked slowly, and for just a second he leaned against her shoulder. Leah didn't move. She thought about her father, how no one ever gave them answers about his death. Just words like classified and "we're sorry." She thought about the equipment in the garage, the radio that shouldn't work, and the way Diesel growled at it like it was alive. She thought about the dreams, the fire, the child being carried, the man shouting, and then she asked herself the question that had been forming quietly all week. If Diesel is carrying someone else's memories, am I? It didn't make sense. Not completely, but she felt it in her bones. In that space between memory and instinct, between dreams and waking. Something about Diesel's presence had stirred a part of her that had been asleep for years. And now, neither of them could look away. The wind off the harbor had shifted that night. Leah noticed it first in the way Diesel stirred, pacing along the hallway like he was hearing something she couldn't. The house was quiet. Too quiet. But the air carried an edge like something was coming. She was brushing her teeth when she heard it, a clink like metal striking stone. Then, a sharp whine from Diesel that echoed through the walls, followed by a crash as he slammed into the back door. "Diesel?" Leah rushed down the stairs, toothbrush forgotten. She found him clawing at the door, growling low and guttural, his eyes wide with panic. A faint, high-pitched sound filled the air, a frequency she couldn't quite hear, but could feel vibrating deep in her chest. Diesel's entire body trembled as he thrashed, trying to get away from the sound, teeth bared, foaming slightly at the mouth. "Stop! Stop!" Leah screamed, throwing open the door. That's when she saw it, an object the size of a soda can, glowing faintly, lying in the grass just beyond the porch. It emitted a pulse of energy like heat waves off asphalt. Diesel tried to run, but his legs gave out and he collapsed, whimpering in pain. Without thinking, Leah grabbed an old beach towel from the laundry basket and tossed it over the device. The sound dulled instantly. Diesel stopped moving. He lay there, breathing hard, his sides rising and falling like he'd just outrun a hurricane. "Come on, buddy," Leah whispered, crouching beside him. "We can't stay here." She didn't wait for him to stand. She dragged the towel-wrapped device into the garage, slammed the door, and grabbed Diesel's leash. He was still weak, his legs shaky, but he followed her as she led him out the side gate and down the dark alley that bordered their backyard. She didn't look back. Her feet pounded against the pavement, cold air stinging her lungs as she ran through familiar streets that now felt foreign. Street lamps flickered overhead, casting long shadows. She knew exactly where she was going, the old shipyard, abandoned since before she was born, a crumbling relic of Savannah's past. It took 20 minutes to get there, her legs burning, her heart racing. Diesel stumbled a few times, but never stopped moving. They ducked under a hole in the chain-link fence, slipping into a rusted corridor filled with broken crates and forgotten tools. The air smelled of salt and oil. Leah helped Diesel into one of the old mechanic sheds and closed the door behind them, bracing it with a rusted toolbox. Only then did she allow herself to breathe. Diesel curled up on the floor, exhausted, but alive. Leah sat beside him, shaking. "What was that?" she whispered. "Why would someone do that to you?" She didn't expect an answer, but someone else did. "I was wondering the same thing," a voice said from the shadows. Leah jumped to her feet. A figure stepped forward, hands raised in peace. He looked to be in his early 20s, with dark hair, a grease-stained hoodie, and the kind of cautious expression that came from seeing too much too young. "Who are you?" she demanded. "Name's Logan. Logan Miles. I saw the device. It's called an S-Frec, designed to disable, well, dogs like him." "What do you mean, dogs like him?" Logan glanced at Diesel, who had lifted his head slightly, eyes locked on the stranger, but not hostile, just curious. "He's not just a dog," Logan said quietly. "He's part of a project, one that wasn't supposed to exist." Leah narrowed her eyes. "Explain." Logan hesitated, then pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket and handed it to her. It was a photograph, old and grainy, but she recognized one of the men in it immediately. Her father, Marcus Hale. "He worked on Project ORCA, Logan said. "I was just an intern. I didn't know what they were really doing until it was too late." "What kind of project?" Leah asked, her voice low. "Memory transference. They were experimenting with moving human memories into animals, K-9 units mostly, soldiers, scientists. The theory was that dogs could carry knowledge and instincts better than machines ever could. Your father, he didn't agree with what it was becoming." Leah's hands trembled. "He tried to shut it down," Logan continued. "But then there was a fire. The lab was destroyed. He saved a child during the chaos. No one ever found out what happened to her." Leah looked up, heart pounding. "It was me," she whispered. "I was the child." Logan looked stunned. "Then that means—" Leah turned to Diesel, her eyes wide with something between fear and awe. "He's carrying my father's memories," she said. "A part of him survived. In Diesel." The silence that followed felt heavy, like the weight of a truth too big for the room. Outside, the wind howled through the skeletons of old ships. Inside, Leah sat beside Diesel again, her fingers brushing through his fur, her mind spiraling with questions and heartbreak. She didn't know where this story would go next, but she knew she was already a part of it. The night was thick with fog as Leah, Logan, and Diesel crept along the overgrown path that wound through the trees behind the abandoned Orca research compound. The facility, buried deep in the outskirts of Savannah, had once been disguised as a coastal marine biology station. Now it stood half swallowed by vines and silence, its rusted fences and cracked concrete hinting at the secrets buried within. Leah's heart thudded in her chest as she crouched behind a collapsed storage container. "Are you sure this is it?" she whispered. Logan nodded, adjusting his flashlight. "There's a tunnel entrance under the west platform, leads to the lower levels. That's where they kept the live units." Diesel remained still at Leah's side, his breathing steady, his eyes scanning the darkness like a soldier preparing for war. He hadn't made a sound since they left the shipyard, but Leah could feel the change in him, his posture, the tension in his shoulders. He remembered this place, and it remembered him. The entrance was hidden beneath a steel grate, rusted at the edges but still functional. Logan pried it open with a crowbar and motioned them down. The ladder led to a long concrete corridor that echoed with every step. Lights flickered faintly overhead, powered by some dying emergency system. The air was damp, filled with the sharp tang of metal, mold, and something colder, something clinical. As they moved deeper, the halls widened into rooms sealed by thick glass panels. Behind the first panel was a cage. Inside, a massive German shepherd sat perfectly still, its ears twitching but its face blank, devoid of recognition. Leah pressed closer to the glass and realized something was wrong. "He's not alive in there," she murmured. "Not in the way you think," Logan replied. "They programmed obedience, not feeling. Every unit in here has a memory bank, a brain encoded with someone else's thoughts. But they shut down emotional response. No fear, no love, just data and commands." They continued on, passing enclosure after enclosure. A lynx paced in tight circles, its gaze empty. A wolf hybrid stood frozen like a statue. In another tank, partially submerged, swam a dolphin marked with a collar of sensors. It turned as they passed, but there was nothing behind its eyes. Only the eerie precision of something built to follow, not feel. Leah felt a lump rise in her throat. "They're like machines," she said. "Living machines." "That's what Orca wanted," Logan said bitterly. "Creatures with human knowledge but no human weakness." They stopped in front of a large steel door, reinforced and sealed with a biometric lock long since corroded. Logan worked quickly, overriding the panel with a portable terminal. The door hissed and opened into what looked like a control center. Rows of consoles and monitors, most cracked and dark. And then, through the ceiling speakers, a voice crackled to life. "Well, well," said a man, his voice calm but cold. "I wondered if someone would come poking around." Leah's breath caught in her throat. Logan stiffened. "Victor Rain." The voice chuckled. "You remember me, boy. That's flattering. I assume you've brought our favorite prototype with you?" At the sound of Victor's voice, Diesel's reaction was immediate. His ears flattened, his teeth bared. A growl rose from deep within his chest. Low, guttural, primal. He moved in front of Leah, positioning himself between her and the source of the voice, even though it came from everywhere and nowhere. "He remembers him," Leah said, her voice trembling. "Not remembers," Logan corrected softly. "He feels him." Across the room, a monitor flickered to life, revealing Victor's face, older than the photo Leah had seen, but unmistakable. His gaze sharpened when he saw Diesel. "There you are," Victor murmured. "Look at you, still clinging to borrowed thoughts. Do you even know who you are anymore?" Diesel growled louder, his muscles rippling with restraint. Leah stepped forward, putting a hand on Diesel's back. He may carry someone else's memories, but his feelings are real. He's not like your other experiments. Victor's smile thinned. That's the problem, isn't it? He wasn't supposed to feel. He wasn't supposed to choose. The words sank like lead into the air. In that moment, Leah understood. It wasn't just that Diesel held remnants of her father's mind. He had become something more, something Orca never intended. Diesel had embraced the memories not as echoes of someone else's life, but as part of who he was. He had made them his own. That's why he reacted, why he dreamed, why he protected her, not by programming but by choice. The emotions that lingered in Diesel weren't data. They were real. They were love, grief, anger, human feelings, coursing through a canine body, never meant to hold them but refusing to let go. He's not your property anymore, Leah said firmly. Victor's voice crackled with amusement. Then I guess we'll have to come take him back. The speakers went dead. Leah turned to Logan. How much time do we have? Not enough, he replied. We need to move. Now. As they left the control room, Leah looked once more at Diesel. He didn't glance back at the cages they passed. He didn't need to. He knew what they were. And he knew, deep in the marrow of whatever soul he had, that he was not one of them. The moment the steel door sealed behind them with a hiss, Leah felt the air change. The room was cold and sterile, humming faintly with machines that had long outlived their purpose. It was a control chamber, centered by a console surrounded with flickering monitors, and no visible exit in sight. Diesel stood beside her, tense but silent, his nose twitching. Logan scanned the panels along the wall, already trying to find a way out. Then the speakers overhead crackled to life, and a voice sliced through the silence. Well, well, the voice said, smooth, measured. Leah Thompson, just like your father, curious, stubborn, and always reaching where you shouldn't. It was him. Victor Rain. His voice sent a chill down Leah's spine. She'd never seen him in person, but she knew this was the man who had overseen Orca, who had turned animals into weapons, who had tried to mold memories like clay. A monitor blinked on. His face appeared, older, colder, dressed in black, eyes sharp and hollow. But he wasn't in the room. Just watching, from a distant control hub somewhere within the decaying maze of Orca's underground labs. Don't bother trying the door, Victor said. You're not captured yet. Consider this a moment of reflection, an opportunity. What do you want? Leah demanded, her voice trembling but defiant. Victor smiled faintly. You already know. I want him. His eyes dropped to Diesel, whose ears lowered in an instinctive growl. He's the last of the original line, the only one who kept the fragments of Marcus Hale alive. Leah instinctively stepped closer to Diesel. He's not yours. Victor's gaze narrowed. He's not yours either, not really. That mind you've grown attached to, it's not even his. It belonged to your father. It was meant to serve a greater vision. Another screen lit up behind them. A command line pulsed with data, glowing a soft amber. Logan read it quickly, then turned to Leah. It's a fail-safe, he whispered. Your dad must have written it into Diesel's code, an override that severs the last connection to Orca's system. If we activate it, they lose all access. Forever. Leah's eyes lit up. Then let's use it. Logan hesitated. There's more. This code resets the core memory. All of it, including the echoes of your dad, including you. Her heart dropped. Victor's voice returned, cruel and quiet. So here's the choice, Miss Thompson. Give him back, and I'll preserve what remains. Or press that button and set him free. But if you do, everything will vanish. His past, his instincts, his connection to your father, to you. Leah looked at Diesel. He stared up at her, calm, still. He didn't understand what was happening, but in his gaze there was a familiarity, a trust that made the thought of losing him unbearable. Her hand hovered above the console. There has to be another way. There isn't, Logan said gently. It's now, or never. She bit her lip so hard she tasted blood. Her father's face flashed in her mind. Not the dream version, not the figure from the flames, but the few old photos tucked between pages of the notebook. His smile, his eyes, the way he'd held her as a child. She had only just started to feel like she was getting him back, and now she had to let him go. Victor's voice broke the silence one last time. "Whatever you decide, it changes everything," Leah whispered, more to the air than to anyone. "Dad, if you're still in there, forgive me." Then, slowly, with a trembling finger, she pressed the key. A soft tone rang out, sharp, crystalline. Diesel jolted, stumbling backward, his legs shaking. A low, aching whine rose in his throat, a sound filled with pain and confusion and something deeper. Loss. He let out a long, haunting howl that echoed off the steel walls and made Leah's heart break in half. Then, silence. Diesel collapsed to the floor, not unconscious, but eerily still. His chest rose and fell slowly, his eyes fluttered open, but the light inside them was different, empty, new, clean. Leah dropped to her knees beside him. "Diesel? It's me, I'm here." He looked at her, but not through her. There was no recognition, no flicker of memory, just a simple, quiet gaze. Victor's voice returned, now colder than before. "A waste. You traded legacy for illusion." On the screens, his image began to distort, static crawling across his face. Logan jumped into action at the side panel, typing rapidly. "I've got control of the local feed," he said. "I can wipe their trace here, lock them out, but we have to go now." Victor's image disappeared. The speakers went dead. No more commands, no more control. Leah looked at Diesel again. He was standing now, slowly, carefully. His body still remembered movement. His instincts were intact, but the bond they had built, woven from memory and pain and trust, was gone. Or was it? She took a step toward the door. Diesel followed. Not because he had to, but because something unspoken still tethered him to her. They exited the chamber into the night, the sea wind biting at their faces, the sky wide and endless above them. No one followed. No alarms, no soldiers. Just the soft crunch of their footsteps over gravel and the rhythmic crash of distant waves. Leah didn't speak. She couldn't. She had lost something precious, something no one else could see. But she had saved something else, something even more fragile: freedom and love, stripped of memory, but not of meaning. As they reached the edge of the dunes, Leah looked back once more at the compound, now quiet, buried in shadow. "I didn't save what he remembered," she whispered, reaching down to rest her hand on Diesel's back. "But maybe I saved who he was becoming." Diesel pressed gently into her palm, and together they walked into the darkness, toward whatever came next. Weeks passed. The chaos that had once consumed Leah's world slowly faded into something quieter, something closer to peace. After everything that had happened at the Orca facility, Leah and her mother moved away from the edge of town. They found a small rental cottage near the coast, tucked between the dunes and the old lighthouse, where the wind carried the smell of salt and the sound of the waves never stopped. It wasn't far from Savannah, but it felt like another world. It was a place to start over, for all of them. Diesel, too, had changed. The night she pressed the override code, everything familiar in his eyes vanished. His mannerisms, his routines, even the gentle way he used to lean against her when she spoke, all gone, replaced by the uncertain instincts of a dog learning the world for the first time. He was still calm, still quiet. But now, he moved with hesitancy, as if unsure where he belonged. He didn't follow her from room to room anymore, didn't sleep by the door or scan the windows at night. For days, Leah feared he would never look at her the same way again. But then, strange things started happening. It began with small, almost imperceptible behaviors. Each morning when Leah curled up in the reading chair near the window, Diesel would pad over and sit at her feet, resting his head on the floor. He didn't watch her like he used to. He just stayed there, present, as if drawn to her voice as she read aloud from old books or scribbled stories into her father's notebook. Then came the day when the sirens from the harbor blared, a long, mournful test of the emergency signal. Leah had been outside tending to the garden when the sound echoed across the cliffs. The last time Diesel had heard that same sound, he'd gone into a frenzy, his body racked with panic, tearing through the house trying to find something that wasn't there. But this time was different. Instead of panicking, Diesel stood alert for a few seconds. His ears twitched. Then he ran. Not away, but toward her. He bounded out the screen door, paws skimming over the grass, and stopped right at her side. He didn't bark. He didn't growl. He just sat beside her, eyes scanning the horizon like a silent guardian. Leah knelt beside him, heart pounding. "You're not afraid anymore," she whispered. He turned to her, and though there was no recognition in the human sense, there was something else, something softer, something that didn't need words or memory to exist. That night, Leah couldn't sleep. The house was quiet, too quiet, in a way that brought back the echo of things she was trying to forget. She rose from bed, tiptoed into the living room, and pulled her father's old notebook from the bookshelf. It was weathered now, its corners curled, pages stained with salt air and time. She flipped through it slowly until she landed on a familiar page. Her handwriting, sharp and uneven, filled the paper. "Even a memory not mine can become my truth if it saves someone I love." She remembered writing that after her first dream, the dream where she saw the lab, the fire, and the man she would later learn was her father. She had felt then, even before understanding what it meant, that memory could be more than something inherited. It could be something shared, something chosen. And now, she understood something else. Love didn't need to be remembered to be real. She looked up and saw Diesel lying in the hallway, half asleep, his body stretched out on the hardwood floor. A thin beam of moonlight fell across his back, catching the slow rise and fall of his chest. "Diesel," she said softly. His ears perked. "Come here, boy." He blinked, and then he stood. His steps were steady, deliberate, as he made his way across the room. Leah set the notebook aside and opened her arms. Diesel stopped in front of her, tilting his head. For one breathless second, she thought maybe he'd turn away. But he didn't. He leaned forward, resting his head gently against her chest. Leah closed her eyes. He wasn't following a command. There was no trace of programming, no protocol guiding his action. This wasn't a reflex. It was a choice. And in that moment, it didn't matter that he had forgotten the sound of her voice or the feel of her hand from weeks before. It didn't matter that the memories of their shared journey were gone, lost to a command she had chosen to protect him. What mattered was this touch, this closeness, this unspoken knowing that had survived even after everything else had vanished. Because some bonds aren't made of memories. Some are made of something deeper. Leah pressed her cheek to the top of his head. "You came back," she whispered. Diesel didn't respond, not with a bark, not with a wag. He didn't need to. His presence was enough. He stayed beside her long into the night, even after she drifted off to sleep in the chair. The moon hung high, and the ocean whispered outside the window. In the quiet, Diesel kept watch, not as a soldier, not as an experiment, but as family. And though he didn't remember who he once was, some part of him knew exactly where he belonged, right here, beside her, loved and free. The sun hung low on the horizon, casting long golden streaks across the ocean as waves rolled in and receded like the breath of something ancient. The little cottage near the lighthouse had grown quieter in recent weeks, less a place of hiding and more a space for healing. The storm had passed, and for the first time in a long while, Leah Thompson could finally breathe. Diesel lay stretched out on the porch, his head resting on his paws, one ear flicking every time a seagull cried in the distance. His coat had grown shinier, his body stronger. To anyone else, he looked like a regular dog, a peaceful presence enjoying a peaceful life. But Leah knew better. Inside, the old oak table was littered with pages, some typed, some handwritten. Napkins, receipts, and the backs of envelopes served as placeholders for thoughts that came quickly and refused to wait. In the center sat her father's leather-bound notebook, its worn cover now softened further by salt air and time. It had become something sacred, not just a keepsake, but a lifeline. And now, it was a book. Leah had titled it, "The Dog Who Carried My Father's Memories and Gave Me Back His Love." It wasn't meant to be published, not yet, maybe never. It was for her, for the weight she had carried, for the questions that had haunted her since childhood, and for the answers she had found in the most unexpected companion. She had filled the pages with everything. The way Diesel had first looked at her through the rusted bars of his cage, the strange dreams that followed, the terrifying night when they'd fled into the unknown, and the moment she'd chosen to set him free, even if it meant losing him. But more than any of that, she wrote about what came after, the way he'd learned to love her again without knowing her name, the way he'd chosen to stay even after the memories had gone. That was what the book was really about. Not science, not secrets, but choice and love. Logan had left town not long after the final confrontation at Orca. He didn't say where he was going, only that the truth had to come out, and someone had to be brave enough to tell it. Leah had hugged him tightly before he climbed into the old pickup he borrowed from a friend. He left her with a promise. "When it's safe, I'll call. And maybe then, the world will be ready to hear your story too." But Leah wasn't waiting for the world anymore. She was writing it for herself. One quiet evening, Karen sat down beside her daughter on the porch, holding 2 mugs of tea and the kind of expression Leah rarely saw, soft, vulnerable, curious. "You've been writing a lot lately," Karen said, offering one of the mugs. Leah nodded. "Yeah." Karen looked at the notebook resting in Leah's lap. "Is it about him?" Leah glanced at Diesel, then back at her mother. "About Dad and Diesel, about both of them." Karen sipped her tea. The ocean breeze played with the strands of her hair. For a while she said nothing, then gently, "Can you read some to me?" Leah hesitated. She had waited years for that moment, a crack in the distance between them, a chance to let her mother into the quiet places of her heart. Slowly, she opened the book and began. She read about her dreams, about the fire, about the night she realized her dog was more than a dog. Karen listened in silence, her hand occasionally tightening around her mug, her eyes glassy. And when Leah reached the part where she had to choose, give Diesel back to Orca or free him at the cost of everything, her mother reached across the pages and took her hand. By the time she finished, the sun had set, and neither of them spoke. Not for a while. Tears traced silent lines down Karen's cheeks. "I didn't know," she said quietly. "I didn't want to ask, didn't want to make it real, but I should have. I should have been there more." "You were," Leah whispered. "You always were." They sat that way for a long time, hands clasped, the wind brushing softly around them. Diesel stirred, rising from his spot and padding over. He nudged his head into Karen's knee, then turned and rested it in Leah's lap. Karen chuckled, a soft, watery sound. "He really is something, huh?" "Yeah," Leah smiled. "He is." That night, Leah added one final line to the last page of her book, a single sentence written in her neatest handwriting. "He doesn't remember who he was, but I'll never forget who he became." It wasn't just the end of a story. It was a beginning. Diesel wasn't a soldier anymore. He wasn't a project or a relic of some failed experiment. He wasn't even the vessel of someone else's past. He was family. The porch became his post, his kingdom. He greeted every guest, every gull, and every sunrise with the same quiet dignity. He didn't chase, he didn't bark, but every evening when Leah stepped out with her notebook and her blanket, he followed, laying beside her with a loyalty that didn't require memory to exist. Love, she had learned, was not about remembering. It was about showing up, every single day. And Diesel had never stopped showing up. Some say memory is the thread that holds love together. But maybe, just maybe, it's the other way around. Diesel may never remember who he once was, but the way he chose Leah, even without memory, shows us something far deeper. Love doesn't have to be remembered to be real. Here on Veil Marks, we believe every story has a soul. If this story touched yours, please consider subscribing, commenting, and sharing. It helps us reach 1,000 subscribers, and truly, it's your voice that inspires us to keep creating. As the old saying goes, some bonds are written not in words, but in moments that never fade. Thank you for watching. And remember, you're always welcome here.